Well, hey, my friends, I'm so glad that you're with me on another edition of the Thriving Christian Artist Podcast. Listen, hold on to your seats because I've got an incredible guest that is here today. Rachel, I'm so glad that you are here with me, my friend. We're going to have a great time, aren't we?
Yes, we are. Thank you so much for having me.
Listen, you're one of these people that does everything. Like, I don't even know how to introduce you because you're like, does she write? Yes. Does she coach? Yes. Does she sing? Yes. Does she create art? Yes. So I'm gonna get out of the way and let you introduce yourself for those folks that are just getting to know you and what you do.
I love that introduction in itself because that is me, everything that you said. So I try to shorten it by saying I'm a writer, speaker, podcast host, and I have a brand agency. But the thread of my life has been being a creative. I mean, I started off writing poetry, then I wrote songs. It went into me singing. I used to love to draw, and I was like, man, I'm good at like a little bit of everything here. So I had to pick and choose what was going to be my thing. So I really stuck to singing for a very long time. And then my love for writing came from my mom, and my passion for reading came from my dad. So in my adulthood, I was like, I think this is the angle that I want to go. So I really decided to go with the more creative component of being a writer and how I could really encourage people through my writing.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Did you have a professional context, I guess, for creativity growing up? Did you have other people that you knew, I guess, making a living from their creativity, or was it kind of everybody was working normal jobs and they were looking at you crazy for wanting to try to make a living?
That was it. I was thinking the other day, I'm like, I was really the only person in my family that went the creative route. I played the flute, like, listen, all of these different things. I played the flute. I taught myself piano, and I just fell in love with creativity probably around the time, I want to say when I was 8 or 9, when my parents got divorced, but I was already getting into it, but we joined a church, and that was the first time I ever really got into the choir component of things. And something about creativity really sparked when I joined the choir. I won't say that at the time I was like the greatest singer. I was learning, right? And I had some people around me that I'm like, I want to sing like that when I grow up. But it really sparked something in me when I added it to the fact that I love to draw and I already love to do poetry at a very young age. So I didn't have that around me, but I feel like God used it as a tool to walk me through different seasons of my life.
Yeah.
And I'm so appreciative of that.
Isn't it interesting? I think, God is so gracious with us. He uses different parts of our creativity to bring provision in our life in different seasons, but also he can use that or a different side of it to bring healing in our life as well. I think, like, for me, these last few years, I've made my living from my baskets and, doing woven sculpture and all that sort of thing. And my music turned into the place of healing and connection with him. Whereas for many years, I was making a living as a worship pastor and as a musician, and my baskets and my visual art was a hobby. And so it's like, isn't it? I just think it's so important for all of us to hold what we do loosely, because if we ever tie our purpose to the expression of what we're doing or the season that we're in, it makes it really difficult to switch, doesn't it? When the Lord moves, because how many of you know the cloud moves, right? Like
yes, it does.
And exactly. You've seen that in your life, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think about when I was younger and I was, in the choir and I was singing and I was, everything around me had to do with music. I mean, all my friends were singers. My weekends were spent singing. My weekends were spent working on my instruments. That's all I did. In school, I was in the band room. My life was spent in the band room. I don't even know how I passed all my other classes because that was life for me. I wanted to be in the first chair, like all of those things. And I remember maybe about 6 years ago when my daughter, she came to me one day because I stopped singing. Let me preface by, I was like, I'm done singing. Singing was for me. My parents divorced, and then in my first marriage, I was a minister of music at the church.
Yeah.
So it was kind of connected to some pain, and I didn't realize it at the time until my husband and I, who we happened to meet in the music studio, by the way, when my husband and I, when we got married, I was like, I'm done singing, and I just stopped singing altogether. I mean, how do you go from singing your whole life to no longer singing ever again? And my daughter, she was maybe about 3 years old, and she came to me and she said, "Mommy, can you sing?" What did she say? "Mommy, can you sing Jesus Loves Me?" And I was like, huh. why does she want me to sing? I was like, I'll sing it tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah.
Not a proud mom moment. I was, but I was starting to feel something like, why is she asking me to sing that? That was random. And the next day she asked me, can you sing? And it was like another song. It was like a little kid song. So I'm like, I sang it to her and she started asking me every day. And every day I would notice this irritation around it. I'm like, why am I irritated that my baby wants me to sing to her? What is going on?
Yeah.
And so I was talking to my husband. I'm like, I can't figure out what's going on with me. Why do I feel this way? So a couple of days later, I was just preparing and getting ready for the day. And God said, you know, Rachel, you have connected seeing with my pain, with pain, not my pain, but with pain. But
Wow.
I want you to connect it with my glory and my goodness.
Mm.
And I'm going to do that for your daughter. And so I started singing with her, like, okay, whatever this is that she's doing, God is using her. Like, God will use our children in the most amazing ways.
Yeah, come on.
And I started singing. Lo and behold, as she got around 6, she's 9 now. I started listening to her voice. I'm like, she has a beautiful voice. Wait a minute. And when I say she's 9 now, this girl sings so beautifully.
Wow.
And what I didn't realize was that my healing was connected to her healing.
Mm.
My healing was connected to her calling. So she was asking me to sing because God needed to heal me, because in me singing, like when we go to church now, she stares at me during worship. But if I was still closed off and like, I don't want to use that gift anymore.
Yeah.
So he allowed me to go through that season. I use that gift. And now I'm like off writing. I'm like, I don't have to ever sing again, right? Like I'll sing in the house when I need to, but I'm off writing, not even thinking anything about singing, but it was generational. He's like, you're passing this on and I need you to experience healing so that you can pass on the gift to your daughter in a healed form. So it was just, I have continued to see that what we do and the creative gifts that God gives us, it's not just for us. But
yeah.
it is going to be for the generations to come and for the voice that we have in this season and the seasons to come.
Yeah, I just love the picture of that, because I think we've all seen in our own, things that we've been through in our life. You can either pass on a remnant of healing in your life, or you can pass on woundedness and trauma as responses in your life. And you look at why are so many people have this abuse and trauma and woundedness and bad thinking and messed up mindsets perpetuated generation after generation after generation. And I think that it's usually because somebody had a wound or somebody went through a trauma and they developed a messed up coping mechanism, and they just replicated that over and over and over again. And we've all been recipients of that. We've all been purveyors of that, I think, probably
exactly.
at some place in our life. But at the same time, there are places when you can say, nope, I'm going to deal with this, and I'm going to pass on healing, and I'm going to pass on wholeness. And I love that the Lord allowed you to really see that in your life.
And let me tell you what happened after that. It's as if I passed the mantle on to her, and things with my writing started to open up so much. I mean, I was getting such download. I would sit down and spend time with God, and it was like I had content out of this world. But before I was writing, but it was really coming from Rachel.
Yeah.
And then it began to really just be Holy Spirit led with my writing. It was like, here, you pass this mantle and I'm gonna release more to you. So it was just a beautiful exchange.
Wow. I love that. Now, Rachel, you are what they call a polymath. I learned that word several years ago. That's a $5 word right here on this podcast.
Right, there you go. Tell me what it means.
That means we like to do everything. And I'm the same way. I've gone through seasons of my life where I'm doing my art, writing, music. I owned a marketing firm for a number of years. I mean, lots of different things. I would say probably one of the biggest questions I get from artists is, Matt, how do I choose what to do in this season? Because I love so much creative expression. Because I really believe, I was teaching this actually last night at a workshop, focus is foundational for artistic mastery, and mastery is foundational for development of your unique voice. And your unique voice is what gives you the edge in the marketplace. So unless you focus, in what you're doing, it's really difficult to develop the mastery and the uniqueness that you need to stand out in the marketplace. So how have you done that? How do you continue to do that, to know the season of what part of your creative expression is taking the forefront and what other pieces are maybe taking the back seat or just coming alongside in a supportive way?
That's a great question. I find that it's very important to be in tune with where I am seeing fruit. And what I mean by that is there are times when I may have put a whole bunch of energy into something, but over here, it seems like I'm starting to get calls about this specific thing, or
Yeah,
people
yeah,
are requesting me for this. Okay, I have to be willing to move because I love to say that the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. So why would God only give those few laborers one thing to do? So I'm going to be moving all about because there's not enough people. So I have to pay attention to, okay, there seems to be this movement happening over here. And so there are times when God will prepare me. And let me say this, what I find is that God prepares for the plan he has that he wants us to execute.
yeah,
So often we are trained that, okay, plan, so that you're prepared and then you execute. But in the kingdom, what I notice is that he prepares us. He prepares us in childhood. He prepares us through events. Then he says, okay, here's a plan I have for you with what I've already prepared you for. And now you're going to execute. So we spend a lot of time in that preparation. So what I find is that I may be preparing something over here, and then it's like a pause. Nothing's happening, nothing's brewing. And then he'll say, now shift to this over here. So I'll go to that over there, and it's brewing, and then something will start happening on the other thing that was sitting for a while. So I have to always be attentive to where he is leading me. I mean, this is
yeah,
literally being led by the Spirit, because I have to pay attention not to what I want. I may want this coaching thing to like take off, but he may be saying, well, right now this is what's going to take off,
yeah,
because I'm still putting things in line over there. So I have to be willing to be really fluid and flexible.
yeah. That's so good. I always tell people follow the favor, right? Wherever you see the favor showing up, just follow, just keep going in that direction. And I think also, as a creative, because people ask me a lot, Matt, you seem to do a lot, but you don't seem to be overwhelmed. Like, how do you have capacity and not be overwhelmed? And I think it's part of what you're saying there. It's like, I'm doing a lot, but it's all within my lane. It's all
Yes.
within my, as some people would say, my zone of genius, if you will, that I'm in this place of, symbiotic relationship where this thing is, maybe I'm mentoring over here, maybe I'm writing over here, maybe I'm speaking over here, but it's all me. It's all working together. And I think when people get in trouble, especially when you think about multiple streams of income and, receiving finances into your life and all that, it's kind of when people start trying to do that outside of their design, outside of their assignment, just thinking, oh, I'm going to go get on that multi-level marketing thing, and I'm going to go to this conference and learn how to do that. And she made a lot of money doing this. I'm going to run over there and do that. That's when you get disjointed and it doesn't seem to be working, and frustration comes, and the enemy can just really paralyze you.
Absolutely. I have seen that happen specifically with someone that I know. And there was this event that they were doing, and they created this whole thing. I'm like, well, you don't do anything with that. So how's that gonna flourish?
Yeah,
Like,
where'd
how
that
are
come
you
from?
going to prepare that? And nothing happened with it. And I believe that one of the most difficult things to do is be okay with what's in your hand.
Yeah.
What's in my hand is what God has equipped me with. And I don't have to look at what everyone else is doing. If I really believe that this is something that he's equipped me with and that he's called me to, then I'll be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I have enough right here, and I have to just be willing to flow with the move of the Spirit.
Yeah. And that I've just learned as I get older, I'm still very young and vital. Hello, but I'm gonna be 50, and I'll be 49 this year. I'll be 50 next year. That's usually how that works. But my wife says, "Why don't you ever say the age you are?" I always say I'm gonna be 49. She's like, "No, you're 48." I'm like, "I know, but I'm looking. I'm a visionary, honey. I'm looking forward, But
I love it.
But I think I'm learning, and as I work with people, at all different places in their life, I learned that being able to recognize the season that you're in, my calling as an artist, my calling as a father to artists and an encourager, it looks different in this season of life than it did 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever. And if I'm still trying to do life like I did it back then, or with those expectations, that can bring a lot of frustration as well. So again, I just echoing what you're saying about knowing the sons of Issachar, right? They knew the times, right, and they knew what to do. That's key in this, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think so often people can kind of get lost in looking at other people and looking at where they should be.
Yeah.
And that may not be where God has you right now for a reason. Like there's literally a reason why you're right where you're at. There's something for you to learn. There's something for you to know so that you can contribute well in
Yeah.
your next season, in the
Yeah.
season that is to come. So I think just learning to be okay with that and serving and doing and all that God has called you to do in this season so you can end that season well.
Yeah. So one of the things I know you're passionate about is, personal branding and how you're represented in the marketplace. And we both, have a passion for that. And I think it is increasingly important, especially for people who are this sort of polymath personality where you may be doing a number of different things. Talk to everybody that's listening, Rachel, about this idea of personal branding, especially when it comes to the fact that you may be doing multiple things in your life. How do you brand a brand that is multifaceted? How do you present that unified voice in a way that's going to be cohesive and powerful?
Yeah, that's exactly where a personal brand comes in. It is for the people. Every person I work with has multiple things that God has called them to do. And it's very difficult to brand this idea and call that business A, and then this idea and call that business B and business C. And now you're like, I have 50 different businesses. But you're running all of them. So why not just brand you, and then people can find what they need as they come to your specific brand. So, I mean, it was really developed, number one, and something my dad would always tell me as a teenager, which is that your reputation goes further than you do.
Yeah.
And I added that component of so does your brand. And your reputation is your brand. So as an artist, as a creative, I want to make sure that what I am putting out there represents me well, because it's going to go places I may never step my feet in.
Yeah.
But people will know me. People will talk about me. People will have things to say, all based off of how I represent it. So there are just some key components to really realizing, okay, I may not have a business because I took this pressure, and it's still a business, but I mean a business entity as in, okay, I'm going to create a business name. Really, my business name is Rachel G. Scott. That is my brand. That is what I represent. And, anything that is connected to that, I find ways to take Rachel G. Scott and multiply her in the many different facets of what I do. So it takes that pressure off of, okay, let me come up with this random business thing for this new business idea and this new business thing. And I can say, what else does Rachel G. Scott do today? Yeah. This is what she does. I can serve you in this way and continue to add to it as God continues to show me new parts of who I am, right? Because like you said before, the things that I did the seasons, years before, I now can take those things and put them into this season. But there are still things I don't even know that I'm capable of doing because I haven't even had to access that area yet. But when I do, guess what? That's going to be a part of my brand. So it allows me to evolve in a different way that maybe just having a business name couldn't.
Yeah, I totally agree. I tell artists all the time, people, I don't know if it was a thing in the 80s or 90s or whatever, people got into, calling themselves these fancy business names and all this kind of stuff, like Holy Ghost Artist Outreach to the Nations Incorporated with Healing Ministries, etc. Incorporated. I'm like, what is this? I'm like, it's Matt Tommy. I mean, that's who you are. It's Rachel G. Scott. It's,
right.
And I always tell people, it's like when somebody's going to look for you, what's the first thing they're going to look for? It's your name. It's your image. Exactly. It's your, that's like you're saying, you're the brand. And so I couldn't agree more. I've kind of, for me, I've got the mentoring side of what I do, and I've got the basket side of what I do. And I figured out early on that those two clienteles were completely different. And so, I have a matttommy.com that's for my basketry. Then I have Matt Tommy Mentoring that's for my books and speaking and mentoring program and all that kind of stuff. But it's still me. It's still me as the person, as opposed to, trying to come up with some other fancy business name. So,
and I think that
simplifies things, doesn't it?
It does. That's what I was going to say. I think I was getting confused with all this. People were asking, what do you do? Well, I have this business and this business and this business. And it's like, this is just too confusing. So, I mean, like even my brand agency is my initials, RGS Group. Like that is probably the closest to a different name that I would go. But everything else, I create a page. It's Rachel G. Scott. And the only reason the G is there, because I get people asking like, why do you use a G? Because Rachel Scott, one thing I encourage people to do is always research your name.
Yeah.
Because people will have similar names and they may have a very strong story. So Rachel Scott was a part of the Columbine shooting. And she has a very strong presence, a very strong story. And I don't want to pull away from hers. And so, I mean, it's still my name. So I had to add the G. So I encourage people, do the research on the name. You may have to use your middle name and your last name or your first name. You know, you may have to
Yeah.
change it up a little bit,
Yeah.
but you are then branding your name as opposed to just the business component of it, so that you can grow and you can have that opportunity to evolve, and your business can have the opportunity to evolve.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of your brand, I know people are going to want to connect with your brand and connect with you and find out more, all the great things that you're doing. So Rachel, where can folks go online to get into your world and find out all the great things that are going on?
Yes, if you go to rachelsgscott.com, you can find all the things I'm doing, as well as on social media. I am Rachel G. Scott on pretty much all the platforms right there.
I love it. I love consistency, right? All the way,
There
all
you
the way
go,
across.
branding.
So I'm loving it. Well, Rachel, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I love what you're doing, your heart to help people to live the life that God's called you to. So thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It's been
Thank you
a
for
great
having me. It's
time.
been such a pleasure.